Welcome to Standing on My Soapbox, the podcast where we talk about the more serious side of topics, such as politics, religion, minority rights, or things we want to just take a bit more of a deep dive into. Join us here on Fridays, as part of Left of Straight podcasts, and be sure to subscribe and tell your friends. Now jump up on my soapbox with me and let's start talking.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Today, joining me on my soapbox, I'm thrilled to welcome Brian Derrick. He's a prominent figure in the political strategy sphere and a fervent advocate for our LGBTQ rights, and a possible upcoming contestant on Dancing with the Stars. We'll have to talk about that later. Brian's hailing from my current adopted state of Ohio here, but is making waves in New York as the visionary founder of Oath.Vote. It's a groundbreaking organization that really helps the dollars go where they're needed to go. We're going to talk about all of that in just a little bit. But first, take a look.
We hear nonstop from Republicans, the border is a problem, the border. Joe should go down there, Kamala should go down there, everyone should live on the border. And now suddenly when Democrats and Republicans come to the table and negotiate a deal, those very same people went running for the hills and want nothing to do with it. As the Republicans are already saying, it's DOA, it's dead on arrival. They will not vote for it. And that is because politics. Donald J. Trump. Trump loves to talk about immigration and talk about the border at his rallies and in his ads and attack Joe Biden on it. And they are very, very afraid it would undercut the Trump campaign and his message.
I'm so sick of getting these texts from candidates begging for $5 when they have no shot at winning. So I got together with my friend and built a platform where you can give to candidates who actually need your money, but without giving them your data so they can't spam you later. It's called Oath. Probably my favorite part of the platform is the impact score, which will actually show you on a scale of 1 to 10 how much that candidate needs your help. So if you do get asked to donate to someone, you can just do a gut check on Oath. And if they have a ton of money or they have no chance at winning, you can avoid wasting your donation. The platform is live now at Oath.Vote and it's free to use. So let me know what you think.
I'm so excited to have you on, my friend. You are just killing it with Oath. I mean, you've been such a great, staunch supporter of LGBTQ rights forever. Let's get my listeners a little familiar with me. Talk about your background a bit and just growing up in Ohio. What kind of kid were you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to be chatting with you today. And it sounds like there we have a lot of parallels in our upbringings as well as our current work and focus, especially in the LGBT space. I started out my career in LGBT activism, working for Lambda Legal in their New York office. That's what moved me from Ohio to New York. And honestly, at my heart, I really am a street activist. It's not something that I get to spend all my time doing anymore, but that's what I really enjoyed in my 20s, probably more than anything, was community organizing and getting people out there and loud behind the people and the causes that needed us most. And so over the last 10 years, that's really included a lot of activism on behalf of the trans community, fighting against things like Trump's trans ban, as well as advocacy for the members of our community who are most vulnerable, like LGBTQ homeless youth, and working with lots of the national LGBT organizations and also some local ones in New York to try to bring more people into the fold and show them that this work isn't over, that we need people to be engaged and paying attention, and that there are members of our queer family that need their help. And so trying to get people engaged and show them how they can do that.
Well said. I love that. And yeah, it's just, it's amazing how far the pendulum can swing. I've been doing this show for 8 years, and my show started on July, 1 week after marriage equality was affirmed by the Supreme Court. I had my very first show 1 week after that. And so we go from that to where we're at these days. It's just kind of crazy how fast things can turn, and it's kind of gone all on one person, but we'll talk about that more in a bit. As far as your LGBT journey, when do you think you first kind of came out to yourself, and when did you start finding your LGBTQ tribe?
I came out to myself when I was 19, right around the same time that I came out to the rest of the world. It all happened in very quick succession. I grew up, I attended Catholic school growing up, but also with a knowledge that my mom's family was Jewish. And so, kind of in this mixed in between kind of world where we would celebrate some Jewish holidays, some and lots of Christian Catholic holidays. And I think that delayed my process quite a bit as I was trying to sort out what my own values system was and who I should be listening to. And it took me a while to figure out that the person that I needed to listen to more than anybody else was myself, and that I knew enough. And so once I did get there, it was a really joyous experience from that moment forward. It totally changed my life trajectory, goals. I went from being a pre-med student at Ohio State going in. I was like a real science nerd studying like mold gen and microbiome stuff, to then switching to public affairs with a focus on civic engagement and nonprofit management, wanting to devote my life to social justice work because I wanted to make it easier for the next person. And so for whoever it was that was going to come out after me, whether that meant coming out as gay or trans, as a lesbian, as bi, whatever that meant, I just wanted to help make that process easier and make sure that people wanted to come out into a world that was ready and willing to accept and celebrate them. And so that's what I really transitioned my focus to being, got more involved in advocacy work that led to ultimately the career that I have today. But yeah, it really all started with that coming out process a long time ago.
That's such an amazing story. Now, was it all self-actualized, the advocacy? I mean, just seeing what you had to maneuver going through and growing up, or was there other events that kind of led you into advocacy? What was there a turning point, or just kind of was a natural progression from this is what my story was, and I want to make sure no one else has the same story, has at least one better story than I do?
Yeah. I mean, my whole network, my family, my friends were very supportive of me. And I was very lucky in that sense because I know people who lost their relationships with their family when they came out. And for me, while I'm so grateful for that, I also still experienced and saw the fear and sort of the danger that people are subject to when they come out in certain parts of this country and in certain places, even in like liberal enclaves, right? Depending on who your immediate support network is. And so my jump into I want to work on this full time was really inspired by the gap that I saw between how things could be and how things should, I feel like, be in the world, not just relating to LGBT equality, although that was, of course, like my intrinsic, like personal experience, but also as it relates to race and wealth inequality and all of these other pieces that as I leaned in to my LGBT activism, learned more and more about and learned more and more how they intersected, and how the same systems that ultimately made me feel so alone before I came out and that made me feel so terrified, honestly, as a young person, were also having damaging effects on people of other communities that were not necessarily LGBT. And so I gained a very specific and persistent interest in those systems and how they could be changed or abolished altogether.
That's amazing. And we're going to talk all about Oath and the amazing technology involved in that in a minute. But talk about, just in your experience, how has the landscape for political advocacy changed? You've been doing this now a long time, and there's always a different thing changing. And obviously the technology is huge, which we'll talk about in Oath in a bit. But what else have you noticed in the landscape that's been changing over the years, maybe too slowly, maybe quickly, that you see kind of evolving?
Yeah, a lot has changed, honestly. In just the years that I've been active full time in political and social justice work, and that's nothing compared to the history of the movement overall. But things change really quickly in this space, and it's important that we are able to adapt and grow and learn and incorporate the experiences of our community's elders, the LGBT community in particular, where you aren't necessarily raised into it, but you're socialized to learn about your people and the history of our community, and these kinds of things like have to be taught. And so I think that it's really important that we are passing that along, because those are the tools that we need in order to succeed in the challenges that we face ahead. And so while the landscape changes, and we could talk about exactly what those changes are, we can still learn lessons. And I still draw on the lessons of people like Larry Kramer and Barbara Giddings, and of course, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera and Frank Kameny, and like all of these incredible LGBT icons that were very important, honestly, in that transition that I made into this being my focus for my life and my work. The lessons that they teach us are still relevant. And so it's simultaneously like, yes, things change really fast, and the tools and the knowledge that have been passed down from generation to generation of activists are still as relevant and as powerful as they always have been. And that's about the power of strategic and coordinated action, the power of organizing and of moving a community and applying a large force to a small pressure point, so to speak. And we've seen that happen again, whether you look back to the AIDS crisis, AIDS epidemic, or whether it's fighting against anti-trans healthcare policies that are happening right now. The lessons are the same, even though the battlefield and the front lines have changed, the messaging has changed, the issues of focus have changed, the culture has changed, but the tools and the determination that our community has always used to win are still there and are still effective.
Yes, well said. Yeah, I have last week's guest on Standing on My Soapbox was Robert Keston from the down at the Stonewall Archives and Library in Fort Lauderdale. And
Amazing.
You talk about history and how important that is. I think that's another thing that we need to kind of talk about, and talk about being progressive where we're at now. We have people like Brandon Wolf and Richie Torres and all these great people in advocacy and in politics now kind of working out. What do you think was one of your proudest accomplishments? You worked on a lot of campaigns and worked, like you said, with Lambda in a lot of different places. What's some of your highlights of your accomplishments that you find yourself most proud of?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Well, in 2022, we launched Oath, which is a platform that, as you mentioned, is designed to help donors of any giving level make the most impact on the issues that they care about. And through just word of mouth and the power of social media and some relationships with community leaders, we were able to motivate more than 10,000 people to give over $2 million to state and local races in 2022. That's without buying lists and spamming people to death or running a bunch of ads. We had no money. We had no staff. I was working a different full-time job, but me and my co-founder, nights and weekends, were just hustling to say, like, someone has to be doing this. Like, someone needs to show people where their dollars will have greatest impact and make those $5 and $10 matter, because they do, right? Like, it matters a lot when you send it to the right place. And that is probably the proudest accomplishment of my career, was the amount of work that we put into that is so clearly reflected in the power that we were able to build in our Oath community. And then you can't always control outcomes, but we did happen to have excellent outcomes in the 2022 midterms for the races that we focused on, flipping key state legislative chambers, holding key offices, keeping election deniers out of office, and making a real difference in states for LGBT people, right? We were focusing on these areas that were going to be key for reproductive rights, for LGBT equality, for gun safety, climate change. All of these issues are happening at the state and local level. And so the ability to grab people's attention in a really noisy world, direct them to something that we cared an awful lot about and make a meaningful difference there was so meaningful to me. It's like addicting. And so here we are doing it again in 2024, and only bigger and better.
That is fantastic. Well, brag on Taylor a bit too. Talk about how you two met and what kind of was the impetus of starting this and putting all those long hours into it.
Absolutely. There's no way that Oath would exist without her. Taylor Arata, my co-founder, and I met freshman week at Ohio State. Excuse me, first week freshman year at Ohio State. We were freshmen for more than a week. And we've been best friends ever since. So I've been best friends with her for like 13 years. I went into the political and advocacy space and sort of did my thing. She went into the tech and data space at Accenture and other like Fortune 50 firms and learned how to build incredibly complex data systems and simplify them for users to drive meaningful insight and impact. And so we combined forces after the 2020 cycle and said, hey, like there's this problem. People are getting tons of spam. They don't really know. People care. They want to help. They don't really know where to start. Let's build something to help direct our friends to where they can make a meaningful difference, because we know so many people who want to help. And that's really what started it all. We did not set out to build something that we were going to launch as a national platform. We did not set out to create something that was going to be our full-time jobs. We just wanted to solve a problem that we were experiencing. And I'm very lucky to get to do that work alongside someone that I care about so much, and also that's so brilliant and talented as she is.
Oh, such a great match there. I love that. I love that you had that friendship to build on before even going into this. Let's jump into Oath too. I mean, I came across you. You were a guest on the Gayish podcast. I love listening to other podcasts. And that's where I kind of I honestly had not heard about it. I'm surprised, as political as I am. But I dug into it, and I dug in quick. I mean, this is an amazing platform you guys have built. As you said, spam. My mom always puts my mom is a big political activist as well, but she's 85 years old, just turned 85. So she puts my email and my phone number on everything she signs up for, and she signs up for way too many things. So I get email blasts and I get text blasts about every 5 seconds on my phone. And you're right, it's almost become spam because it's not interest that I'm necessarily interested in. It's kind of causes they're looking for. But then as I started to explore Oath when I first found you and everything, the filters are amazing. Everything from LGBTQ equality, reproductive rights, climate change, gun safety, protecting democracy, flipping the house, next generation leaders, which I love. I mean, it's just great that you can kind of filter those things. The brainchild behind this, it's just amazing what you guys have done.
Thank you so much. And that really is the pivotal dynamic shift that we were going for. Is we didn't want to come up with a plan and then ask donors to help us achieve it, which is, I think, the dynamic of a lot of organizations. But more so, we wanted to ask donors, what's important to you? Like, what are you looking to achieve? Is it the issues that you just mentioned? Is it a specific state? You want to focus just on Ohio, where you live, or Pennsylvania, where you're from? You want to focus just on state legislative races or just school board races? There are so many places in our democracy that we have power if we have knowledge. And we just wanted to provide people that knowledge to say, great, go off and make an impact in that race or on that issue in that state. Here's how. Here are the races. Here are the candidates that need your help the most. And so we analyze thousands of elections at every level of the ballot in order to find those sort of like crown jewels where they're really under the radar, they're under-resourced, they're super competitive, they need help. And then we just connect them with the people who are already mission aligned and looking to make a difference in those kinds of races.
Exactly. And as you expanded upon, like I put some of the key topics there, but there is that search bar. You can put anything you want, and it really is an amazing algorithm. It'll pull this information. I love the way that works. And I think that it's really important too, that you kind of give a quality score too. Explain to them what that means and how that kind of helps influence what you're doing and what the needs are with that.
Yeah, as we evolved the platform, that was something that we always had dreamed of, but have only been able to implement thanks to the growth that we sustained in 2023 and building out our own team to help us achieve it. And that's our impact score. And that is a very simple numeric signal to donors on a scale of 1 to 10. How impactful are my dollars in this race? And it's based on 3 metrics: competitiveness, stakes, and financial need. And the goal is that the higher the score, the more meaningful it is to give my $10, my $100, my $1,000 to this race. Because there are a lot of races who are out there with a lot of Facebook ads or texting you a bunch of times who might not actually have a path to victory, or they have a clear path to victory, but they already have so much money that they really don't need additional funds. And so we wanted to be able to signal to people where their dollars would go the furthest, because by our estimation, we already have all the resources that we need in the ecosystem. It's just about allocating them more efficiently. Right now, we spend hundreds of millions more dollars on US Senate races than Republicans do. And we spend much, much less. We are outraised consistently in a lot of down ballot races, especially state legislature. So it's just about reallocating funds. And in order to sort of realign people's perspectives and preferences, you have to share better information. And so the impact score was our simple way where anyone can search the name of a candidate or a state and very quickly see our assessment as to the value of their donation there.
And what has been your challenges both in the election side and in the tech side that you guys have had to know? How do you kind of balance that? Have you had anything you've had to really overcome or anything that surprised you?
Yeah. Well, moving money in the political space is much harder than selling t-shirts online or like some other very simple sort of transactional business. It's highly regulated. And so we needed to make sure that we were doing it in a way that was really transparent to both donors and the campaigns, that we were meeting all of the legal requirements. And so we've had partners help us get to that point, which has been really helpful and instrumental. When people give on Oath, the money goes straight from the donor to the candidate. Oath doesn't take the money. We don't take control of the money. We don't decide where it goes, and we don't take a cut. We just are sharing information and recommendations. And so getting to that point where that could work seamlessly was a bit of a process, but that's been up and running for quite some time now. And on the tech side, we have an amazing team. I'm not technical by nature or trade. Coming from the political space, working with engineers and developers was very new to me. But we have this rock star team that is from like GoFundMe and CrowdRise and these other organizations and platforms that have helped donors build sort of new kinds of experiences and powerful tools before. And so they've really helped us shape what our roadmap looks like, to not just give a better user experience, but also add entirely new functionality into the platform and into the space. I will preview here first that in the near future, we will be releasing an enhancement that will allow individual donors to see how many friends they invite to the platform and how those people support different candidates across the country, so that you can see the impact of your network, not just your own personal impact. And we've also implemented things like personal budgeting, so that if you say, okay, well, I want to spend $200 on elections this year, we can help you figure out exactly when and where to send those $200 based on your specific priorities and issues. And so things like that have been actually a real joy to build because we get such good responses from our users and donors.
That's fantastic. I'm with you. I am not technology. I did the first 5 seasons of this on telephone radio only because I just didn't really understand the video. I always say I have the face for radio. I didn't like being on camera. So it's kind of like, it's a whole new thing, but it's kind of fun to learn about a little bit, to be on the sidelines, right? Fun to be on the sidelines.
I learn something every single day in my job. I will tell you that. Starting something new is very hard and requires a bit of like delusional belief in yourself and in your team, your partners, which I'm sure you understand, having created adventures of your own. And yeah, you learn a lot every single day.
Right. Now, talk about the role of technology and advocacy and political engagement through. How do you kind of find ways to work that on all sides? I mean, seniors are not big savvy. This is seniors. I mean, seniors are a big voting block, but they don't necessarily have all the savviness of online. They're getting a lot better. But how do you kind of find yourself reaching out to the different markets? We talk about young voters who are hugely computer savvy, but don't seem to be as activated this year. Talk about going your demographics. How do you figure your demographics out?
Absolutely. When you talk about technology in the political space, for me, it's never really a question of if, it's just a matter of how. And introducing technology to the political process is inevitable when you think about things like AI. And I think it's not very productive to say, oh, well, should we do this? Should we do this? It's like, it's going to happen. So how can we prepare? How can we do this safely, effectively, and in a way that supports and promotes democracy rather than in a way that harms people, marginalizes communities, helps the powerful at the expense of the not powerful? And so that's how we've approached this as well, is like algorithms, for example, are sort of an inevitability in the world that we live in. And so we wanted to use the power of that to unlock potential and to even the scales between the super rich who have always had access to this kind of data or have for a long time, and grassroots donors who might not. And so when I think about our average user, average donor, they really range from people in their 30s up through people in their 70s and 80s. We have a few organizations that we work with where all of their members give through Oath. And one of them in particular is based in New York, and most of the members are in their 70s and 80s. And it's a learning process for sure, because they think about and approach and use technology differently than I do, or than me and my team, who, of course, lots of my team are engineers, so they use it differently than me. But you have to think about that. And it's about including those people in the conversation early on. From like the design standpoint, is you don't build something and then try to sell it to a bunch of different people in a different way. You include those people at the outset and say, how would you use this? Or what does this mean to you if we say this, or design it this way, or point you in this direction? And so incorporating that feedback early on was important for us. But we really do see as Oath as a platform for everyone. We've reached most of our users through social media. And so we definitely have a bias there in our current user base for people who are social media active. That skews a bit younger, but because the donor audience skews a bit older, we're still talking about people in their 40s, 50s, 60s being our core audience. And so the goal is to make it usable for everyone and their crowd and their family and friends along.
And make it enjoyable. I mean, I teased in the intro about Dancing with the Stars. You really kind of put personality behind it. Use the social media. Talk about how that all came about. And is it as fun for you as it is for everyone that watches?
Is. When I'm having fun on social media, I am authentically having fun. Like, it is not an act or a facade or that I put on. I think that there is joy missing from our political system and from our political landscape right now. There's so much negativity. I think that's amplified by algorithms that really like to promote content that creates outrage and fear and anger. And I want to be the counter programming to that, because I think that that's the default. Cynicism now is the default. And I want to counter program that for people and pull them out of that endless doom spiral to the bottom, and instead say, hey, actually, when you look past the news feed of it all and what's being served up to you on a platter to make you feel hopeless, there actually are lots of good things happening too. I'm not saying everything's perfect, but I'm saying you're missing the good stuff. you're not being shown the good stuff online. It's not designed to show you that. It's designed to show you the bad stuff. And so I'm going to try and show you the good stuff. One way that we can do that is by really celebrating the wins. When something great happens, don't just keep swiping and ignore it. Stop, pause, celebrate the moment, because those are the things that we all spend so much time pushing for and fighting for. And that's what I think reinvigorates your passion and your dedication to this work. If you don't celebrate the wins, you can only move backwards from where you are right now, right? You need some wind at your back sometimes to move forwards. And so I try to be the wind at people's back, and I lean in when there's a big win, even if that means just a simple state legislative race in Pennsylvania or in New Hampshire or something like that. Maybe that's going to get a dance on Instagram, because we need a little bit more dancing that day.
There you go. Such a right way to look at it. I mean, we have to have. I mean, it could swallow you up whole. I think you put that on your Instagram about the kind of abyss you can get into there. But you can get trapped in the negative, and you only have that microcosm view of your own place, right? And I think that's what I like about this site is I can see what's happening back in California where I grew up, and I can see what the races are looking like there. I can see what's happening in different areas, and there's different successes in different parts of the country, right? And we need to do all these little successes are going to lead to the bigger successes. So 2024, huge political year, obviously. And the great thing about Oath is you're there forever, because there's always some state race or some other kind of race. So there's always going to be something going on. But of course, 2024 is huge. What do you think is the biggest needs right now for us politically to really get out there and do?
Of course, everyone's attention is on the presidential and the rematch that nobody really asked for with Biden v. Trump. My honest advice for the people who are already politically engaged, which if you even identify as politically curious, then you're already much farther along than the average voter, the average person in the country who actively avoids this stuff. If you're engaged at all, look down ballot. The presidency will happen as it's going to happen. And I'm not saying that it's not important work, because it is. But no matter how many people I go tell that to, there will still be an endless supply of money and time and volunteers for the presidential election. There just will be. They have instant access to all of the media and all of the channels that they could possibly want. When you look down ballot, there's so much at stake. When you think about the issues that we are all talking about every day, the anti-LGBT legislation going on, the abortion bans being passed, criminal justice reform, climate change decisions at the local level, which really matter, book bans and school board races, these things will go completely unresourced if people like us, and I mean you, the person listening to this, do not step in to that void. And that's what's happening right now. That's what's going on all the time. And so my call to action for people who are engaged is to find something else to focus on this year. Even if you do continue to engage in the presidential, find a companion race to go alongside that. There are 11 governors races, 10 attorneys general, 7 secretaries of state, 82 state Supreme Court seats, 13 state legislative chambers that could flip one way or the other. There are 2,000 prosecutor and sheriff's races around the country, 20,000 school board seats that are up for election. Find one or a couple. You can use Oath to find them and just adopt that race and stay really focused there, whether it's where you live or it's somewhere you have family. I think that that's the most impactful thing that you can do, whether you're volunteering, you're donating, you're making calls, you're talking to friends. Finding someone who doesn't have those kinds of resources is where you're going to see the biggest impact for the input that you can put in, the efforts that you can put in.
I think that's so true. I do phone banking every year out of my house here for things, and I've had people call already that was back when last election cycle. Are you going to be doing phone banking? It said, yeah, but we also had just veto of the trans bill here, of the governor's trans bill. So let's talk about that as well. And I think it's so well said that you talk about having companion pieces to work on, because it's you really need to check about the different issues that are local there. So I do love that. And speaking of that, it kind of gives me a good question, because I remember I didn't phone bank for Biden. I phone banked for Hillary Clinton last time. I've done a lot of different things for other people. And the thing that frustrated me the most, I had people over, the lists were so out of date of people that were different things. Half the phone calls you would make were non numbers. Are you able to use your technology to work with other organizations and keep databases up to date outside of Oath?
Yeah, one of our commitments to our donors on the platform is that we will not pass their contact information along to any of the recipients of their donations or anyone else. We never sell data. We don't share or swap donor contact data with anyone. And so that allows donors to come onto the platform and make a donation. You might split a donation 5 ways between 5 really critical state legislative races or ballot initiatives or something. And you know that you're not going to go get put on 5 more lists, because people just can't deal with the incoming text and the email solicitation anymore. And so we don't participate in that specifically. But I guess what I will say around that is that there are more and more tools and technology and organizations that are focused on other ways to reach people. And so phone banking will continue to be important. I'm not knocking phone banking, but there are also things like relational organizing platforms and tools that show you, oh, well, your friend Suzanne actually lives in a really competitive House district in Pennsylvania. They can tell that from your contact list or because you put her information in. And there are really cool technologies and tools that do these kinds of things. And then it's not you calling a stranger and an unknown number on their phone, but it's you calling Suzanne and checking in with Suzanne to say, hey, I just wanted to make sure you knew that there was an election. You're actually in a really important district, and there's a candidate there that I would love to tell you a little about, right? And suddenly, like, that's the most effective way to turn out voters and to get through to people. And the last thing I'll say just in 15 seconds is, when it comes to young people, it's really hard to reach them via text or phone. Really, really hard. And so it's also about being in the places that they already are. You have to meet people where they are. And that's on TikTok and on Instagram and on these platforms that young people spend up to 8 hours a day watching video content. And if you don't have a voice there and a presence there, then they're not going to hear much about you at all, whether you are phone banking to them or not. And so that's part of, you asked earlier about like what's changed in the space, and it's changed in the LGBT advocacy space, and it's changed in the political space, that like the messaging machines that you need to build now are much more advanced, and they're much more specialized and sort of like user generated. But that's the only way to reach people now in organic ways.
And back to what you said, that's been our biggest tool for LGBTQ advocacy, is reaching out and learning and meeting people one-on-one, talking to Aunt Susie, who you were afraid to come out to because you know she's really conservative, and saying, look, it's still me, Aunt Susie, and this is why I think it's real important for you to kind of look at these kind of views of what's happening here. Because I think reaching out to those common people, like you said, finding out who's interested in what state races, that's so amazing. So good job on you guys for doing that. I'm so incredibly proud of you, Brian, and just think it's a fantastic organization. I do, on my Left or Straight show, I do 5 questions with at the end that I play the next week, which is kind of fun, goofy questions. For Soapbox, I can take a little more seriously. I like to do 5 takeaways. So help me do 5 takeaways for the listeners here. Let's start with the importance of local and state races. You touched on it. Is there any ones that are hitting your hot button right now of some hot local races, and what is the importance? Remind people again what the importance of a state and local race as opposed to the presidency or the Senate.
With state and local races, you can see things change really quickly in a way that it's often difficult or impossible at the federal level. Look at Minnesota last year, or in 2022, we flipped the state Senate, and since then have passed a really ambitious climate and paid family leave and sick leave policies, new red flag laws, anti-discrimination laws. The list goes on and on of what has been accomplished in Minnesota. And so you can make a huge difference with just a handful of votes, because the Minnesota Senate was flipped with about 2,500 votes, which is nothing at all, but has made a big difference in millions of people's lives. So the takeaway there is that things move really quickly and they move on small margins. So one person or a small group of people can make a big difference.
Very, very nice. And what is your takeaway on today's power of the pen? We used to always hear, write your state representatives, write your local representatives. Is that still a good tactic? Is it a better place to put your emails and writings to?
Still
Talk about that
as
for a second.
impactful as it always has been. Whenever you can, make it personalized. I think that some of the templated responses have lost some of the weight, because they know that it only takes someone 5 seconds to shoot off a template response. So it works when it has huge volume. But I think that if you are taking the time, if you're able to just write it doesn't have to be long, a 4-sentence email or a letter, make the phone call. It does matter. They are logged. I have worked with members of Congress and other kinds of representatives who monitor those things really closely. So it absolutely does matter.
Fantastic. And what's your takeaway to be a candidate for office? Say someone is getting politically minded. They really think that they can make a difference. They're passionate about the school board. They're passionate about the library board. They're passionate about their region or their township. Talk about the takeaway on what it takes to be a good candidate for office these days.
You should run. We need people. We need you. I think that to be a great candidate, the first thing that you need is to care an awful lot. And that's what makes someone a good civil servant in this country, is someone who is doing it for the right reasons. And so if you feel motivated by the issues, whether that's attacks on the LGBT community or the fight over repro rights, voting rights, anything like it, then now is the time to step up. Because if you don't, then maybe no one will, right? And that's how we get into this backslide. That's how we get into the problems that we're experiencing now. There are great organizations to help you. I would check out Run for Something, would be my first stop on that journey. They have amazing trainings, free resources for candidates, how to run a campaign, how to file to run, all of those kinds of challenges. So I would go to Run for Something.
Fantastic. Great advice. All right. Third takeaway you could share, talk about, or fourth, we're in fourth already. Talk about the best practice, and we just touched on it a second ago, on friends and family in politics. Is it best to, we don't want to be too confrontational. We don't want to be too mamby-pamby, for lack of a better word about it. How do you talk? What's your template and takeaway for talking? Say you're really passionate about an issue, but it's just not grandma's cup of tea. How do you suggest approaching that?
I have a politically mixed family, so I have holiday dinners across the table from 2-time Trump voters, and so I know this is very personal for me. I think the most important thing is just to decide what your goals are going in. In my experience, if your goal is to convince someone of something, you've probably already lost. I think that the goal should be to find areas of agreement first and foremost. Only by starting in those areas of agreement can you move into a place where you can deepen understanding, their understanding of you and your beliefs, your understanding of them and their beliefs. And that's how people change hearts and minds. It's not from a list of facts and figures or by poking holes in their argument. You just back someone into a corner that way, and oftentimes they'll double down. So look for areas that you can actually agree and really spend time in those spaces, and like figuratively. And I think that things flow more naturally from that point, and know that you can only do so much, and that we're all responsible for our own perspectives.
Very good. And say it from love. You're not trying to start an
Absolutely.
argument. You're trying to start a conversation. So it's like you don't want to go in with preconceived this is why you need to do this. You need to talk about, this is why I feel it's important to me. I want to hear why it's important to you. And let's see, we can agree. So very well said on that. And finally, give me your takeaway for, we're getting all my listeners to go to Oath.Vote today. What's the first couple places they should check out? How should they start to navigate themselves through there? What do you see a lot of first timers go through when they get to the site?
The first time you sign up at Oath, you can let us know what issues you care about most, how often you want to receive recommendations from us. And if you are planning to donate, what your approximate budget is. $5 a month, $5,000 a month. We see it all, honestly. And then we will send you personalized recommendations throughout the cycle to make the most of your donations. And so you can, at any time you're feeling motivated, or if something happens, there's a Supreme Court ruling or a new law is passed that you love or you hate, oftentimes we'll have resources set up right away to direct you to the thing to do that's going to be the most strategic response to that. So it's there for you all the time. But if you want to kind of lay back and have the recommendations come to you, we can do that as well.
Brian Derrick, thank you so much for being on Standing on My Soapbox, standing right here beside me. You and Taylor have created an amazing organization. Let my listeners know where they can find your website and where they can follow you on social media. Maybe get a dance in or
well,
two.
you can visit Oath at Oath.Vote and check out the platform there. And you can always find me at Brian Derrick on social media platforms.
All right. Well, there you go, guys. Standing on My Soapbox every Friday here in Left of Straight Podcast Network. Brian Derrick, you're going to have to come back throughout the political season here. I don't think we're going to find any shortage of topics to talk about. Next time you come visit the family, flying to Columbus, I'll buy the coffee and drive you the rest of the way, and we'll have a
that sounds great.
catch up in person, my friend. All right, stay on the line for me. Guys, we appreciate you every Friday right here on Standing on My Soapbox. Be sure to watch all the Left of Straight podcasts Monday through Friday for you. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Standing on My Soapbox, brought to you by Left of Straight Podcasts. We appreciate Brian Derrick of Oath.Vote joining me on my soapbox and sharing his keen insights in politics and how to make your money work in the most cost-effective way possible through their amazing algorithm. Be sure to subscribe to Left of Straight Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating after listening, follow us on social media, and share with your friends. Have a great weekend, everyone.